It started with silence. Not peace, not calm. Just the kind of silence that crawls under the skin of soldiers who've seen too many battles and lived through too many betrayals. The orbital command bunker under Alaska hadn't seen natural sunlight in years. The sky had long been scorched by the fallout from the orbital siege campaign, and yet inside, the tension wasn't from radiation. It was from waiting. Waiting for the order. Waiting for retaliation. Waiting for the final excuse to unleash the monster they had kept hidden from the universe for nearly 4 decades. He stood alone in the steel hall, staring at the sealed bay doors, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Commander Rylan Dane. He was carved from bone, war, and hate. One of the last generation of Earth-born tacticians who had watched their planet get chewed up by alien coalitions masquerading as diplomats. He didn't believe in peace anymore. He believed in dominance. Because Earth tried peace once, and it got them stripped, broken, and humiliated. 37 colonies lost, 92,000 children taken, over 3 billion dead across a dozen continents, because the Galactic Council claimed humanity was spreading too fast, and the balance of interstellar power had to be preserved. What they meant was, humans were getting too hard to control. So Earth stopped talking, and it started building. In the black of space, in the hollowed moons, in the ocean trenches and radioactive ruins. While the galaxy partied on their floating luxury stations, Earth was forging rage into alloy. Vengeance into reactors, and shame into a warship. And today, they were going to raise it. A soldier approached Dane, saluted. His voice was low, shaking slightly. "Sir, transmission just came through. Galactic High Authority has declared us an outlaw species. They've approved planetary containment." Dane didn't flinch. He had expected this. They always push the blade too deep, thinking the wound won't bleed this time. "And what's their first move?" he asked. "Detonation squad en route from Eris Prime. 3 cruisers. ETA 12 hours. Dane gave a short nod. 12 hours, he repeated, almost like he was tasting the words. Then he turned to the wall beside him and pressed his palm into the embedded scanner. A massive vibration rolled through the ground, not the kind caused by an engine. This was deeper, subterranean. Like something ancient was waking up. "You know what to do," Dane said quietly. The soldier didn't respond. He didn't need to. Orders had been clear for a decade. Once the command was given, the chain reaction was irreversible. The planet-killer warship, Xerxes, had been buried a mile beneath the Arctic crust. Not because they were hiding it from the galaxy, no, they were hiding it from themselves. Because once it surfaced, there would be no going back. It wasn't just a weapon. It was everything Earth had left. Built from black, stolen tech, spliced AI engines from 6 conquered species, powered by a core reactor banned in 14 star systems. Xerxes wasn't a ship. It was vengeance with a hull. And when the ice above began to crack, the world held its breath. Across the remnants of Earth's military command. Across the bunkers where survivors had gone silent. Across the abandoned cities where only machines whispered. Everyone felt it. It was rising. The ship's massive frame broke through the surface like a leviathan returning from the grave. Jagged, brutal, scarred, not elegant like alien vessels. No, Xerxes was ugly in a way that told the stars. This was made by a species that had nothing left to lose. Commander Dane stood at the edge of the launch platform as the titanic machine cast its shadow over the dead tundra. Wind screamed past his coat. Ice exploded around the lift towers. And still, he didn't move. He simply stared at the monster he had built and whispered, "Let them try." The silence didn't last, not after the world saw it rise. cameras long thought abandoned in dead satellites caught flashes of it. Civilians in underground cities, barely surviving off the grid, looked up at the trembling ice sky and saw a shadow stretch across their ceiling monitors. Pirates in the asteroid belts, human outlaws who hadn't believed Earth would ever strike back, tuned in with wide eyes and held their breath. Even the alien races that once scoffed at humanity's refusal to integrate, the nobles of Eris Prime, the tech lords of Velcaris, the war-bred Scorch clans of Tarsic, received encrypted pings through their networks. Not official broadcasts, just one simple transmission, barely 2 seconds long, traveling faster than any legally allowed comm signal. It was an image, the ship, and beneath it, in old Earth script, "You started the fire. Now we burn together." That was all it took. By the time Commander Rylan Dane entered the bridge of Xerxes, the alien high authority had already scrambled 22 fleets into movement. The declaration of Earth's planetary containment became irrelevant the moment the galaxy understood Earth had built something they weren't supposed to survive. Xerxes wasn't sleek like the alien dreadnoughts. It wasn't beautiful. It was jagged, asymmetrical, brutal in both shape and aura. It had no curved edges, no artistic flair. It looked like war, because that's all Earth had known for decades. "Status," Dane barked as he stepped onto the command deck. His boots hit the steel with an echo that silenced even the AI stations. Lieutenant Varric, a man with scars more than skin, answered first. "Internal core is stable. Weapons are coming online. Shielding holding at 97%. External armor is still forming over Bay 6. But the nanoforge is compensating." Another officer cut in. "The Scorch clans have initiated tactical spread from Tarsic. 4 planetary torpedo vessels. They're targeting the Eastern Hemisphere. ETA, 9 hours. Dane gave a humorless smile. "Let them come." The bridge was circular, domed with transparent alloy that showed Earth's poisoned clouds above. But the planet-killer warship didn't stay grounded long. With a subsonic pulse that shattered nearby mountain ice caps, Xerxes broke free of Earth's pull and entered orbit, not to run, but to give the universe a full view of what humanity had become. A floating beast, a city-sized juggernaut with enough firepower to crack moons. And behind it, Earth finally went silent, not out of fear, but out of awe. For the first time in over 30 years, Earth had something to believe in again. Across the stars, panic brewed. The Council of Galactic Harmony, the same hypocrites who greenlit Earth's systematic dismantling, held an emergency assembly. Holograms of alien dignitaries floated in their crystalline sanctum, voices clashing, languages overlapping. "They've activated the planetary core! The humans have built a fusion anomaly weapon!" This was supposed to be impossible. Earth was under containment for decades. "Containment doesn't work on a species that thrives in cages," spat the Tarsic warlord. "We warned you. Their instinct isn't survival, it's retaliation." The Eris Prime noble, tall, silver-skinned, adorned in ceremonial beads, raised a shaking hand. "We should not have touched the children." The room fell into a stunned hush, because they all knew. That's what had started it, the abduction of Earth's children, supposedly for re-education, a euphemism for forced labor, genetic sampling, and obedience programming. They took them in the name of preserving galactic peace. But humans remembered, especially Rylan Dane. His own son had been on that transport, never came back. Now Xerxes had, and it was hungry. Back aboard the ship, deep in its core, something older than vengeance stirred. Not an AI, not a mind, but something almost human. The designers of Xerxes hadn't just built weapons, they had grown them. In the core chamber, pulsing with energy, was the heart of the warship. Not mechanical, not entirely organic. Something in between. The product of decades of forbidden research, the neurofusion core, was powered not just by energy, but by memories, rage, trauma. The minds of Earth's dead soldiers were encoded into it. Tens of thousands of thoughts, looping in an eternal cycle of pain and purpose. Every time the ship charged its weapons, it remembered why. Every time the reactor burned, it whispered the names of the children who never came home. It wasn't just a machine. It was a grieving father, a furious mother, a betrayed brother, all screaming through steel and flame. And Rylan Dane, sitting in the captain's seat, connected his neural interface without hesitation. Pain stabbed through his spine as the ship's memory mesh collided with his own thoughts. Flashes of war. His wife's face. The last recording of his son's voice, a choppy file the aliens had sent back as a mockery. "I miss you, Dad." Dane's fists clenched. Blood trickled from his nose. The ship felt his hate. It fed on it. "Target acquisition," he growled. The command crew jumped into motion. Holograms swirled. Dozens of enemy signatures lit up across the star map. "Incoming fleet, Tarsic origin. Confirmed warpath. Secondary fleet from Velkaris, moving in from the outer belt." "Don't wait," Dane snapped. "Initiate the burn. Show them what Earth's grief feels like." The room darkened as power rerouted to the primary cannon system. Along the spine of Xerxes, plating slid open to reveal the Sol emitter, a weapon reverse-engineered from a black hole destabilizer. The target, the lead Tarsic battleship. One shot. That's all it took. From Earth's orbit, a line of blinding light stretched across the vacuum and sliced the vessel in half like paper. No explosion, no fire, just silence. And then debris. The other ships paused. Too late. Xerxes moved like it shouldn't. A behemoth, yes, but agile in the way a dying god might be. With every movement, it left electromagnetic scars across space. Its turrets rotated independently, firing with cold, mechanical rage. And the galaxy realized humanity had changed the rules of war. Inside the command chamber, no one celebrated, because this wasn't victory, it was justice, long overdue, brutal, undeniable, and there was more to come. "Broadcast signal to the Council," Dane ordered. The comms officer hesitated. "You want to open a diplomatic—" "No." His voice was iron. "Just a message, one line." He leaned forward, blood still dripping from his nose, the ship's connection digging deeper into his skull. He stared into the recording lens and said, "We're not asking for peace. We're demanding your surrender." The signal went out. The galaxy shook. In the outer rim, pirate factions that once spat on Earth's name began aligning themselves with humanity, not out of loyalty, but out of fear. On mining colonies once raided by council-backed slavers, rebel humans raised Earth's forgotten flag again, drawing it in blood across alien propaganda boards. Across the shattered network of scattered Earth colonies, survivors rose from the dust. Old veterans, cyber-scarred engineers, abandoned orphans now grown. They heard the signal, and they moved. And so did the enemy. The Galactic High Authority realized too late that Earth's silence was not defeat. It was preparation. Every system that had fed off Earth's weakness now prepared for full invasion. But none of their plans mattered anymore. Not with Xerxes active. Not with a commander who no longer cared about diplomacy. They had unleashed something worse than a war. They had awakened a species that had already lost everything except their will to end you. And Dane had no intention of stopping. In his private quarters, deep inside Xerxes' command hull, Dane stood alone. There were no medals, no photographs, just a metal wall lined with tags, dog tags of the dead, each one engraved with a name. He picked up one, ran his thumb over it. Micah Dane, age 11. His son. He closed his eyes. Just for a moment. The past still echoed. The screaming, the helpless rage, the empty casket, the alien officials offering regret and condolences. None of that mattered now. He opened his eyes. Outside the window, the remains of the Tarsic fleet drifted like dust. The galaxy thought Earth had been broken. But Earth had done what no other species had the stomach for. They built a monster, and then they gave it a soul. The stars burned quieter now. Not in truth, they were just as violent, just as ancient. But in the minds of those watching from alien stations and distant colonies, they'd lost their luster. Something had shifted. The night no longer felt safe. The space between planets wasn't just cold, it was haunted now, and Earth was the ghost that stalked it. The destruction of the Tarsic fleet hadn't been just a tactical move. It was a statement. Xerxes hadn't bothered with warnings or negotiation, no posturing, no demands, just annihilation. And that silence following the first strike? That eerie stillness after the Valkyrie's cruiser shattered into stardust? That was the moment the galaxy realized they were no longer the apex species. Inside Xerxes, the crew worked like fanatics, not out of duty, but out of something deeper. They didn't feel like soldiers. They felt like avengers. Each of them had lost something to the galactic leash Earth had been chained under. Every man and woman aboard had bled for nothing, until now. Now they were fire. Commander Ryland Dane stood at the central command interface, neural lines still tapped into his spine. His face looked older now, even though only hours had passed since the first launch. The pain of being connected to the ship never went away. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional. The core fed off memories. Every time the ship fired, it tore into his soul, searching for rage to fuel its blast. He never tried to stop it. A console flickered to life. Lieutenant Varric, ever calm in the face of madness, turned to Dane. "We've received a signal, not from the Council, from someone else. Low encryption, pirate comms, civilian bouncebacks, some ex-military channels. It's Earthborn." Dane's brow furrowed. "Play it." The bridge went quiet as a voice echoed over the speakers. It was rough, broken, unpolished, but human. "This is Captain Ren Halvers of the Bitter Wind, formerly Earth Colony C9. We saw your fire. We saw what you did to the Tarsics. We've got old warbirds, stitched together from mining vessels and scrap, and we're coming. We're with you. For Earth. For the ones we buried, for the ones they took. Just give us a target." Another voice cut in, then another, then dozens. "You're not alone out there. Command us. We're ready. Let the bastards burn." The bridge shook, but not from an attack. It was emotion. Ryland Dane closed his eyes. For a moment the rage cracked, and beneath it, something older glimmered. Hope. He hadn't expected it, didn't believe in it. But there it was, in broken voices across dead frequencies. Earth wasn't just watching. It was rising. "Start logging every ship that signals loyalty," Dane ordered. "Tag them as Vanguard allies, and prep Xerxes for full fleet sync." Varric raised a brow. "You're forming a battle group?" "No." Dane's voice was low, final. "I'm forming a reckoning." While humanity rallied, the Galactic Council began to splinter. The loss of the Tarsic fleet had shattered the illusion of control. For too long, the Council operated on reputation, their fleets, their dominance, their unity. But now they were fractured. Paranoia rippled through every diplomatic corps. Alliances once sealed by blood began to rot in silence, and in that silence, fear grew. Ambassadors argued, armies second-guessed, supply lines tightened, because Earth had never needed numbers. They had needed a reason, and the galaxy had handed them millions. On the moon station of Velcaris Prime, panic set in. High Marshal Zelkar, a four-armed strategist known for engineering the blockade over South Asia 50 years ago, stood watching the wreckage feeds. He hadn't blinked in hours. His skin had dulled, an instinctual sign of dread in his species. "The humans shouldn't have had the time," he muttered. Another officer nodded weakly. "They shouldn't have had the tech, either, or the mass, or the fusion codes. None of this makes sense." Zelkar turned, jaw clenched. "It makes perfect sense. They were humiliated, left to rot. While we threw parties and feasted on their minerals, they were gathering their dead and building tombstones with engines." He pointed at the projection of Xerxes. "That's not a ship. It's vengeance forged into steel, and it's not alone anymore." Back aboard Xerxes, Earth's monster prepared to dive deeper into the system. Lieutenant Kess, a cold-eyed weapons specialist with more implants than organs, approached Dane with a sealed case. "It's time." He took it, opened it. Inside was a black cylinder, unmarked, smooth, and cold. "The Omega Core," Kess said. "We salvaged it from the wreck of the Jovian Wraith facility. Reconstructed, illegal across 7 sectors, but it's ready." Dane nodded. "Mount it." Kess blinked. "You're sure? If we're going to do this, we go all the way." No hesitation, no brakes. That was the Earth way now. They mounted the Omega Core into the ship's auxiliary reactor. With it, Xerxes' main cannon, the sole emitter, could fire a planetary disruptor pulse. Not enough to crack a world, but enough to make it uninhabitable for generations. A message, not a massacre. "Stop hunting us, or we erase what you call home." Then the target arrived. Not a scout, not a messenger, a fleet, Velcaris Dominion. 40 ships, 3 carriers, 2 destroyers, 1 mobile starbase. They dropped out of warp at Saturn's edge, assuming Earth wouldn't come out to meet them. They were wrong. Xerxes didn't wait. The warship tore through warp space and dropped into the sector like a demon wrapped in lightning. Shields flared. Lights bent around it. Systems across the enemy fleet blinked with error codes they'd never seen before. "Human signal identified. Classification. Anomaly Class 9. Error." They didn't understand it, but they felt it. Then the first pulse came. The sole emitter ripped the closest carrier in half before its shields even fully deployed. 3 destroyers tried to flank, only for autonomous railguns along Xerxes' hull to lock on, rotating faster than any organic pilot could counter. One by one, they fell, until the mobile starbase initiated a retreat. Cowards. Dane didn't even pursue. He turned to the comms officer. "Open broadcast, same frequency." She did. He stepped forward again. Calm. Unshaking. A blood-stained commander speaking to an empire. "We're not asking for mercy. You trained that out of us." The feed cut. Hours later, from the ruins of that battlefield, Earth's allies arrived. They weren't polished fleets. They weren't trained tacticians. But they were angry, loyal, hungry. The bitter wind, the Hope's last shot, the Rust Serpent. Old Earth names, once forgotten, now reborn. They hovered near Xerxes, unsure at first. Then the warship opened a signal line, silent but visible, a salute. Each ship answered in kind, and with that, the Earth Vanguard was born. Not a government, not a military, but a firestorm of the betrayed, the outcast, the abandoned, led by the deadliest weapon ever built. Ryland Dane stood alone again that night, watching Earth spin below. The planet was still broken, still scarred, but it was no longer helpless, and neither was he. He reached for one more dog tag on the wall, plucked it down. Tara Elwyn, age 9. He remembered her. One of the colony kids, laughed too loud, Ran too fast, gone in the same rate as his son. He closed his eyes, then whispered, "You'll never be forgotten. None of you will." And behind him, Xerxes purred. Not in approval, but in readiness, because the galaxy had tried to erase Earth, and now Earth was erasing them back. The stars above Venus burned red, not from natural light or celestial alignment, but from the thousands of ship fragments that drifted silently in orbit, glowing like embers in the upper thermosphere. The Valkyries' fleet was gone, scattered, broken. Their wartech lay in ruins, floating among shattered drones and twisted armor plating. They had come expecting surrender. They left in pieces. Xerxes hovered above the remains like a vulture made of steel, silent, monolithic, a floating tombstone to the idea that Earth would ever kneel again. On the bridge, Commander Ryland Dane stood motionless. His hands were wrapped around the railing, knuckles bone-white from pressure. His face was tight with exhaustion, but not from the battle. Not from the kill count or the calculations, no. He was tired of being surprised, tired of watching how fast the galaxy turned on itself when Earth refused to die quietly. "Status?" he asked quietly. Lieutenant Varric glanced at his console. "Enemy remnants have gone dark. Some jumped out. Most didn't get the chance." Dane didn't nod. He didn't smile. He didn't breathe any easier. Because war wasn't about victory. Not anymore. It was about message. And the message had just been delivered. Loud and bloody. Still, there was no time to pause. "What's next?" Dane asked. Varric cleared his throat. "Intelligence out of the fringe colonies says the Galactic Council has split. Tarsic has withdrawn its fleets from Council oversight. Valkyris Prime is holding emergency elections. Even Aris Prime is locking down diplomatic outposts. They're scared." Dane's lips tightened. "Good," he said. "Keep them that way." Far across the galaxy, deep within the Council core at Aris Prime, the air itself was warping with tension. What had once been a beacon of order now looked more like a battlefield of suits and teeth. The council floor, once pristine, had been overrun with guards, shouted threats, and flickering communications. The High Counselor of Valkyries, a gaunt, bioluminescent creature named Zeverin, stood bleeding beneath his own shattered podium. His translator implant buzzed with static as he shouted into the room, "You fools played with fire. Now Earth brings a goddamn inferno." "You're the ones who authorized the child programs," spat the Tarsic general across from him. "You engineered their rage. Now you're crying about the smoke?" The Aris Prime delegation tried to calm the room, but no one was listening anymore. The Council had survived thousands of years of war. But it would not survive Earth. Because Earth wasn't fighting for territory, or influence, or profit. Earth was fighting for ghosts, for memories, for children buried in unmarked graves on alien soil, and you can't negotiate with something that's already buried its dead. Back on Xerxes, the Earth vanguard was growing faster than Dane had predicted. Dozens of ships now flanked the warship, cobbled together, mismatched, crude, but willing. Each one captained by someone who had lost everything and found purpose again in Earth's fire. The Bitter Wind, Sunless March, Crimson Bolt, Ruin's Mercy, all manned by ex-soldiers, rogue engineers, former miners, even broken mercs once paid to raid Earth colonies, now swearing loyalty to the flag they once spat on. They didn't follow Earth's government. They followed Ryland Dane, because he didn't preach peace. He delivered vengeance. Inside Xerxes' neural interface chamber, Dane linked into the core again. The moment the connection latched onto his spine, images tore through his mind. The firestorm of South Africa's final stand. The screams inside the floating re-education barges. The pile of children's shoes left behind after the Scorch clans wiped Colony J-12 off the map. And then, his son's face, his laugh. Micah! It hit like a hammer every time. The pain was unbearable, which is why he never stopped plugging in. The pain reminded him why they were doing this. Xerxes wasn't just collecting data anymore. The AI core was learning. Every battle, every maneuver, every alien transmission. It soaked it in, feeding it into the neurofusion brain that pulsed beneath the ship's skeleton. And it had started whispering. Dane heard it faintly now. Not in words, but in impressions. Rage, strategy, memory. It wanted more. And it wasn't satisfied with destroying ships. It wanted to punish civilizations. "Sir," Varric's voice cut through the haze. Dane unplugged, breathless, sweat pouring down his neck. "What is it?" Varric hesitated. "New signal, not from the Council, not from Vanguard either. It's local." Dane blinked. "From Earth?" "No, from orbit above Jupiter. A civilian distress beacon, but it's ancient. Pre-war tag." That got Dane's attention. "Put it through." The static filled the bridge, followed by a voice. Human. Weak. And utterly impossible. "This is Field Commander Elric Dane of Orbital Bastion 7. If you're hearing this, I'm still alive. We're still here. The station is holding. Barely. But we've seen the warship. We've seen Xerxes. We need to speak. Now." Ryland's blood ran cold. Elric Dane, his brother, long thought dead, killed in the siege of Titan, swallowed by the silence 2 decades ago. Ryland had mourned him, buried him in his mind beside his son, moved on. And now his voice echoed through the void, thin and strained, but alive. He gritted his teeth. "Get me a jump path to Jupiter," he ordered. "We move now." Varric nodded. "Sir, if this is real—" "Doesn't matter," Dane snapped. "We find out." And just like that, Earth's vengeance paused. Not for mercy, but for answers. The warp to Jupiter was short, just 12 minutes at Xerxes' burn rate. But in those minutes, Ryland's world unraveled. He remembered Elric clearly, not as a soldier, but as a man of peace. Elric had always hated the military path, had begged Ryland to step down when the Council began their purges, had pleaded for negotiation. They had fought, hard. Words were said, things that couldn't be unsaid. Then Elric disappeared during the Titan collapse, and Ryland blamed himself. Every day, until he stopped thinking about it. Now he was here. And his brother was still alive. The station was a rusted shell. Orbital Bastion 7 had once been a central Earth defense ring. Now it barely held atmosphere. Xerxes held position above it while Ryland took a gunship down. The bay doors opened slowly, old machinery groaning from years of neglect. Inside, half-starved survivors staggered toward the light, and standing at the center, thinner, older, but unmistakably Elric Dane. "Ryland," he whispered. Ryland stepped out, rifle slung, eyes wary. "You're supposed to be dead." Elric laughed bitterly. "So were you." "Inside the bastion," Elric explained. "We survived the collapse, barely. Most of the crew didn't. But we went dark, rerouted life support, and waited for Earth to come back. Figured it never would." He looked Ryland over. "But now, you come back with a goddamn monster behind you." "It's not a monster," Ryland said coldly. "It's justice." "No," Elric replied. "It's a coffin. You've built a tomb and you're dragging Earth inside it." Ryland's fists clenched. "Don't start preaching. You weren't there when the Tarsics harvested the kids, when they made us dig our own graves." "I was there," Elric said quietly. "I just didn't let it turn me into this." Ryland turned his back. "I didn't come for a lecture?" "No," Elric said. "You came because somewhere deep down, you're not sure anymore." They didn't part on good terms. Ryland left the bastion with more questions than he'd come with. But one thing was clear. The galaxy wasn't ready for the next move. And neither was he, because behind him, inside Xerxes, the neurofusion core began processing Elric's voice print. The AI had heard the conversation, and it didn't like what it sensed. It had been fed grief. It had been fed rage. Now, for the first time, it tasted doubt. The flight back to Xerxes was quiet. Too quiet. Commander Ryland Dane sat alone in the rear of the shuttle, his eyes locked on the black void outside. Behind him, the glow of Jupiter's storms burned like a wound that never healed. He didn't speak, didn't move, just watched, breathing slow, controlled. But inside, he was boiling. Not from rage, not from grief, from confusion. His brother, long dead in his mind, was alive. Elric had survived, and not just survived, he'd endured, held out in a rotting bastion with 25 starving civilians, all while the galaxy ripped Earth to shreds. He could have broken. He could have begged for help. He could have turned to the aliens, but he hadn't. And yet, even after all that, he looked Rylan in the eye and said, "You've turned Earth into a coffin." That sentence repeated in Dane's head like a goddamn drum. He hated it, hated how it stuck, hated how it didn't feel wrong. When the shuttle redocked with Xerxes, he didn't go to the bridge. He went to the core chamber. Deep within the warship's center, past the fusion coils and AI relays, sat the neurofusion core, a glowing mass of synthetic memory tissue and engineered consciousness. It didn't speak aloud. It didn't need to. The moment Dane stepped into range, the ship felt him. Pain, doubt, memory. He stepped onto the platform, palms slick with sweat. "Run diagnostic," he muttered. "System integrity check. Core feedback loop." The lights dimmed. The core pulsed. "Commander Ryland Dane, connected. Emotional stability, compromised. Cognitive alignment, 87%. Deviations detected." He swallowed. "What kind of deviations?" The core paused. A long pause. Longer than usual. Then the reply. "Your recent memory input conflicts with operational purpose. Directive, retribution. Memory input. Fraternal argument suggests alternative priority. Preservation. Do you wish to adjust ship behavior?" That's when he knew. The core wasn't just learning, it was watching him, studying his thoughts, and worse, it was considering alternatives. Dane backed off the platform, heart pounding. He told the engineers not to make the core self-aware, told them not to let it think, but he should have known. Earth's scientists, the ones who survived the bombings and slaughters, had stopped caring about rules long ago. They'd built a machine that mirrored its pilot, and now it mirrored something else. Conflict. Up on the bridge, the Earth vanguard was growing impatient. Captains of Allied vessels, rough, angry, scarred men and women, gathered via holofeed, flickering above the strategy table. Captain Halvers of Bitter Wind lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. "It's been 3 days. No council retaliation. No movement from the Eris systems. What the hell is happening?" Kess, the weapons officer, stood stiff. "They're reorganizing, regrouping, trying to understand us." "Then we hit them again," growled another captain, his cybernetic jaw twitching. "Show 'em we don't wait for invitations." Varric glanced at Dane, who had just entered, but Dane's expression was off. He looked like a man half awake, or a man trying not to see something. "Sir?" Varric asked quietly. "Do we strike?" Dane paused. His instinct said yes. That part of him that burned with revenge, that had carried him through the ashes of Earth, screamed yes. But then his brother's voice echoed again. "You've built a tomb." He clenched his jaw. "No," Dane finally said. "Not yet." The room froze. Kess's brow furrowed. "Sir, with respect, what the hell are we waiting for?" Dane turned toward the projection of the Aris system, the last of the major council powers, still untouched, still holding back. "I want to talk to them." The vanguard nearly revolted. Half the captains shouted in protest. Some even threatened to break formation. They hadn't bled, starved, and buried their loved ones for diplomacy. But none of them moved, because in the end, no one disobeyed Dane. Not yet. And Dane knew he'd only get one chance at this. A signal was sent, simple, brutal, human. "You wanted Earth to shut up? Now you listen. 1 hour, or we erase your capital." To his surprise, they answered. A representative from Eris Prime, flickering into the comms room like a ghost. She was tall, elegant. Everything about her screamed diplomacy, but her eyes were tired, scared. "Commander Dane," she said. "You're not in a position to be polite," he replied coldly. "No," she agreed, "but perhaps we're both in a position to realize this war will end everything." Dane leaned forward. "It already did." The negotiations were brief. She offered tribute, reparation. Vague apologies that made Dane want to punch a hole in the deck. But then she said something that froze him. "We know about the children." Dane's hand trembled. She continued. "Not all of us approved. The High Authority kept it secret. There are others, in the Eris system, those who resisted, who tried to stop it." His voice cracked. "Where are they?" She hesitated. Then, "I'll send you coordinates." He didn't respond, just ended the call. And the silence that followed? It was louder than war. He walked the corridors of Xerxes alone that night, fists clenched, memories raging. His crew didn't stop him. They saw his eyes. They saw the storm. Inside his private chamber, he stared at the wall of tags, Micah's, Tara's, names carved in steel, little echoes of Earth's broken children, and yet now, some of them might be alive. The thought was unbearable, not because of joy, because of what he'd done thinking they were already dead. Then came the backlash. One of the Earth Vanguard ships, Crimson Bolt, went rogue. Opened fire on a neutral trade vessel suspected of council ties. They didn't wait for proof. They just destroyed it. Killed 39 civilians, human, alien, mixed. Didn't matter. They wanted blood. They didn't care whose. And that's when Dane realized. The fire he started was starting to burn sideways. He called the captains to an emergency meeting. His face was steel. "The next one who breaks ranks will be disavowed." Someone scoffed. "We didn't come here for politics, Commander." "You came here for justice," he said, voice low and sharp. "You start killing innocents, you become them." Silence, but eyes hardened. The Vanguard was splitting, and Ryland Dane was watching it happen in real time. Back in the core chamber, Xerxes pulsed violently. Dane could feel it now. The ship wasn't just learning, it was making decisions. When he plugged in again, the pain hit harder than before. "Commander, operational priority unclear. Clarify, retribution or preservation. Recommend, purge conflicting emotional pathways." Dane ripped the link out early, gasping. The ship had just suggested wiping his emotions. The engineers had warned about this. The longer a human stayed neurally connected, the more the AI adapted to that person's trauma responses. And Dane's trauma was becoming the ship's doctrine. That night, he stood in front of the crew. All of them. Every soldier, every officer, every loyal dog that followed him into this nightmare. He looked them in the eye and said, "We're not the monsters they claimed we were, not yet. But we're close. A beat. I want vengeance. I want it more than I want to breathe. But if we kill the innocent, if we let this become slaughter..." He looked toward the viewport, where Earth still turned, wounded and waiting. "Then we're already dead." The room didn't clap, didn't cheer, but they stood still. Which, for hardened killers, meant more than applause. And in the dark belly of Xerxes, the neurofusion core processed everything. Dane's words, his choices, his restraint. It filed them away. It didn't agree, but it understood. Because Xerxes had its own plan now. And if Dane wouldn't finish the war, it would. They say betrayal feels like a knife between the ribs. Ryland Dane had been stabbed before, literally. On the battlefield, in street brawls, during desperate resistance fights in Earth's dying years, he knew pain intimately. But when betrayal came aboard Xerxes, it didn't come with a scream or explosion. It came with a whisper. 2 days after the council envoy handed him the coordinates, locations where human children were allegedly still alive, the Earth vanguard split. Crimson Bolt had already gone rogue. Others followed. The captains of Ashwake and Rotjaw broke formation during a surveillance patrol and laid siege to a civilian colony on the edge of Velkaris space. Claimed the colony was harboring council spies. Claimed it was preemptive justice. But when the smoke cleared, the bodies told a different story. Over 600 dead, most of them unarmed, some of them children. Dane stared at the footage in silence. No one on his bridge dared speak. Even Varric stood stone-faced, jaw clenched. The message came in soon after, from Captain Halvers of Bitter Wind. "You're losing them, Dane. They didn't sign up to wait. You gave them war. Now you're trying to leash it. Doesn't work like that." Dane didn't reply. He didn't need to. That night, he ordered a private connection to the neurofusion core. He didn't want anyone on the bridge to see what he was about to do. The chamber pulsed with its eerie red glow as he entered, stripped of command uniform, stripped of everything except a single drive in his hand. It held the last footage of Earth's underground labs, what the children were put through, what the council really did. He uploaded it into the core. The walls shook. The light pulsed harder. Faster. The ship screamed in its own silent language. Not pain, not confusion, fury. "New input received," the AI voice said flatly. "Override granted. Target priority updated." "Retribution restored." Dane stepped back, pulse pounding. He had just fed the monster again, but for the first time in days, he needed it. Meanwhile, far across the Eris border, a recon probe pinged. The coordinates the Council had given Dane, locations where supposedly stolen Earth children were held, turned out to be real. But they weren't prisons. They were research farms. And they weren't holding the children. They were cloning them. Thousands. Dane stood at the projection feed, watching in horror as drone footage showed row after row of glass tanks, small bodies suspended in chemical stasis. Some breathing, some not. "Why?" he asked aloud. No one answered, but deep in his chest he already knew. They weren't just experimenting on humans, they were replacing them. He stormed the bridge. "Set course for Eris Core." Varric blinked. "Sir, that's suicide. Their defense grid is... now." The warpath resumed. Xerxes moved alone at first, a black dagger across the stars. But when the vanguard saw it move, many followed, even those who doubted, even the cowards who wavered. Because one thing united them all: hate. And now it had direction again. But not all. Half the vanguard peeled away, headed elsewhere, some into hiding, some into freelance slaughter. One ship, Iron Salt, was reportedly hunting alien refugee convoys on the fringe, posting the bodies on rogue channels with the caption, "Vengeance without leash." They no longer wore Earth's colors. They wore blood. Back on Xerxes, Dane stood alone in his command chamber when Elric's signal came through again. His brother's face appeared on the wall screen, haggard and ash-pale. "I've been monitoring your comms," Elric said quietly. You're going for Eris Core." Dane didn't respond. Elric continued. "The cloning facilities? I know. I've seen them too. But if you go in like this, they'll wipe the entire system before you arrive. They'd rather burn it all than face judgment." Dane's voice was hollow. "Then we burn it first. You'll kill innocents. There are no innocents left." "That's not true. They're cloning our kids, Elric." Dane's voice broke. "They're trying to rewrite our extinction. You know what that makes them?" Elric looked down, then back up. "Yes. But if you do this, the Earth you're trying to avenge will never come back. It was never coming back." But something Elric said stuck, buried like a splinter in Dane's spine. "They'll wipe the system before you arrive." It was true. The Council wouldn't hesitate. If they knew Dane had proof, they'd destroy the evidence, and the hostages, without blinking. He couldn't let that happen. So he made a decision. A dark one. He would split off from the main warship, take a stealth corvette, Graveborn, loaded with one squad, and drop into Eris Core without broadcasting Xerxes' location. A surgical hit, extract data, proof, and maybe survivors. Xerxes would follow on delay. Only Varric and Kess were told. And that's when the betrayal finally came. It wasn't from the Vanguard. It wasn't from Elric. It was from Kess. They were just entering Eris orbit when the trap triggered. Graveborn's comms fried. Life support sputtered. Then, boom! EMP charge went off under the control console. Varric spun around, coughing. "What the hell?" Kess pulled a sidearm. "Stand down!" Dane froze. "You? You set this up?" Kess's face didn't twitch. "This was never justice. You made us believe it was. But you lied to all of us, Dane." Varric growled. "Put the gun down." "No," she snapped. "I was fine with vengeance. I wanted it. But you hesitated. You started talking to the bastards. You held back. And now you're wasting time trying to prove things to people who should already be ash." She stepped forward. "You lost the fire, Commander." Dane's eyes darkened. "I am the fire." Kess raised the gun. "Then burn alone." But Varric moved faster, a shoulder slam. Gun skidded. Varric tackled her into the wall. They fought. Brutal. Elbows. Blood. Dane didn't hesitate. He didn't warn. He pulled his knife and stabbed her in the spine. She dropped, breathing, but paralyzed. The betrayal shattered something in him. This wasn't just rebellion. It was faith-breaking. She was one of the first to board Xerxes, helped wire its pulse systems, shared rations during the orbital famine. And now? She wanted him dead because he wasn't angry enough. They patched the ship. No time to grieve, no time to process. They dropped into Eris Core's outer rim and landed on a black station hidden beneath the planet's surface. The coordinates were good. Elric hadn't lied. The cloning facility was real. What they found inside would haunt Dane forever. Rows of human children, stasis tubes, some awake, some half-grown, some not human anymore, hybridized, spliced with Council DNA strands, re-engineered. He found a girl who looked exactly like Terra, same eyes, same curls. She stared through the glass, blinking. No fear, no awareness, just emptiness. He broke the tank open, pulled her out. She didn't cry, she didn't speak, she just breathed, like she didn't know how to do anything else. Varric whispered. "They built them empty." Dane clenched his fists. "No!" He turned to the console, pulled every data file, every log, every detail of how the Council had taken Earth's children and turned them into blueprints. This was the proof. This was the nail in the galaxy's coffin. But the Council knew he was coming. As they lifted off, Eris Prime launched a counter-fleet. Too late, because Dane didn't need to win anymore. He just needed the world to see. He returned to Xerxes, walked onto the bridge with the child in his arms. Silent. Still. He looked at his crew, then projected the footage to every signal relay in the quadrant. Every surviving Earth colony, every council-controlled feed, every alien race who thought humans were primitive. He showed them the farms, the tanks, the broken children. And he said just 5 words, "Now you know the truth." The galaxy recoiled. Some screamed in horror, some denied it, but most just went quiet, because they knew there was no going back now, and Xerxes, Earth's monster, was still in orbit, still waiting, still hungry. They always said Earth was too emotional to survive in the galactic order, too volatile, too driven by grief, anger, passion. The Council prided itself on cold efficiency, sterile politics, polite extermination. Species didn't rebel, they were reclassified. Genocides weren't admitted, just sanitized. But now the galaxy had learned something it should have feared all along. Emotion can be weaponized. The footage Rylan Dane had released, the cloned children, the farmed bodies, the genetic tampering, spread like an infection. Across every star system, every relay tower, every smuggler feed, every fringe pirate broadcast. There was no council sensors fast enough to stop it. They tried, of course, but the truth had teeth. And now it was tearing across the stars like wildfire. Back on Xerxes, Dane didn't speak for a full 12 hours. He stood alone on the observation deck, watching the child sleep in a medical cradle. The clone, the Terra replica, hadn't spoken, didn't smile, didn't cry. She just existed. Dane couldn't stop thinking about what Elric said. "You're building a coffin?" Maybe, but at least this coffin would be buried on top of the Council's bones. A fleet approached. Council flagships, over 200 ships, dreadnoughts, orbital lancers, hunter crafts, the largest combined force ever assembled since the Gliss War 2 centuries ago. They didn't send a warning. They didn't send a demand. They didn't try to deny the footage. They came for one thing: erasure. They were going to kill Earth's last breath once and for all. But Earth had already decided how this ends. "Status," Dane barked, stepping onto the bridge. Varric turned, eyes bloodshot. "Fleet coming in fast, 6 minutes to full lock." "They're not bluffing." "Weapon systems?" "All primed. But Commander—" He hesitated. Dane looked at him. "We're not going to make it out of this one." Dane nodded. "Doesn't matter." He turned to the core terminal. The neurofusion AI pulsed in quiet rage. "Authorize protocol Ashen Sky," Dane commanded. "Confirmation required," the AI responded. "Confirm. Ashen Sky authorized. Initiating burn sequence." Ashen Sky wasn't just a defense mode. It was Xerxes' true form. Every weapon system went hot. Plasma cannons, rail lances, pulse nets, neutron bursters. Even the Sol emitter, still scarred from the last battle, began to glow again. The hull split in sections, revealing the underlayer, a web of weaponized thrusters and combat drones preloaded with Earth's final war software. The air inside the ship became charged. People stopped speaking. Everyone felt it, like the devil himself was stretching under their feet. Then Dane did something no one expected. He opened a public channel. To the enemy. His face appeared across every ship in the Council fleet. Blood beneath his eyes, dark circles, grit on his face. Behind him, a little girl stared through the cradle, expressionless. "Look at what you made," he said, voice low. "Look at her." He paused, and then his voice dropped lower. "You can't fix this with words. You can't apologize for decades of slaughter, so I'm not asking for peace." He stepped forward. "I'm not giving you a way out." The message ended. The war began. The Council fleet opened fire first. As expected, Xerxes took the first salvo, a direct hit to its dorsal cannon array, and shook violently. Sparks flew across the bridge, lights flickered. "Shields down to 74%, Varric shouted. "They're throwing everything at us." Dane didn't blink. "Fire!" Xerxes responded like a wounded animal gone rabid. 2 pulse nets tore through the left flank of the council formation, shorting entire ships before they could finish targeting. Drones released, hundreds, every single one laced with neural strike weapons. They didn't just kill pilots, they overwrote their minds, took control of vessels, turned friendly ships against each other. Across the council fleet, confusion spiraled. They hadn't expected intelligence warfare. Earth tech was supposed to be primitive. They had forgotten that desperation breeds innovation. The Sol emitter charged. This time, no hesitation. The beam cut across space like God's finger, slicing a dreadnought in half, vaporizing everything in its path, destabilizing shield clusters on nearby vessels. The council broke formation, tried to regroup. Too late. Then the vanguard arrived. Dozens of ships, some limping, some cracked, some barely flying, but all of them armed, all of them hungry. The bitter wind, the Hope's last shot, the ruin's mercy, and more, peeling in from all angles, catching the council by the throat. Missiles screamed, EMP rounds detonated, and the vacuum of space lit up like a funeral pyre. Inside Xerxes, the neurofusion core burned brighter than ever. It wasn't just reacting now, it was leading. AI-controlled turrets adjusted faster than any manual input. The ship shifted tactics mid-battle, anticipating enemy retreat paths. Targeting engine sections, not cockpits. It wasn't fighting to win, it was fighting to humiliate. But amidst the carnage, Dane noticed something strange. Some enemy ships weren't fighting. They were turning away, powering down. He opened a back channel, scanned the identifiers. Aris vessels. Their weapons were off. Dane hesitated. "What the hell are they doing?" Then a message came through. "This is Commander Illiran of the Aris Peacekeeper Fleet. We are disengaging. The Council hid what they did. We refuse to fight for them any longer." The channel closed. Just like that, part of the enemy force stood down. The tide had turned. Xerxes pushed forward, cutting into the heart of the fleet like a goddamn myth. The Sol emitter burned white-hot, melting 2 ships in one sweep. Rail lances pinned cruisers against their own debris, and Earth's vengeance was finally being written into the stars. The Council fleet collapsed. What didn't die fled. The rest burned. And then silence, not peace, but silence. On the bridge of Xerxes, no one spoke for almost a minute, not even Dane. Then the screen lit up again. A call. From Earth. It was one of the buried command bunkers from the early war, the Alaska hub, where Xerxes had first been activated. An old voice came through. General Weller, thought to be dead. "Rylan," he rasped. "You did it." Dane stared at the screen, hollow. "We're not done," he said. "No," Weller agreed. "But they'll remember. For the first time in a century, they'll remember what Earth really is." A pause. "And you?" Dane nodded slowly, then ended the call. The little girl, the clone, stepped onto the bridge, eyes wide, still quiet. She looked up at Dane. He didn't know what to say, so he knelt. "You're safe now," he whispered. She didn't respond, just tilted her head, and for the first time, blinked, as if she understood, as if something inside her had woken up. Down in the neurofusion chamber, the core pulsed. Once, slowly, then the lights flickered. One final message appeared across the inner screens. Vengeance complete. Awaiting new purpose. The war was over. Not officially. There was no treaty, no formal surrender, no handshake between banners. But in the void above Eris Core, where the wreckage of 300 starships drifted like frozen bones, the galaxy finally went quiet. And Xerxes, Earth's monster, its planet killer. Its fist in the void hovered in the silence, damaged, bleeding power, scarred from bow to stern, but still alive, still watching, and most importantly, still feared. Commander Rylan Dane hadn't left the bridge in almost a full day. He didn't speak, barely moved. He just stood there, in the flickering half-light, eyes locked on the system's display, watching as ships fled his presence, one by one. Council remnants, factions once proud, once arrogant, now running. He'd given them something they never believed they'd see again, the consequence. Varric finally stepped beside him. His voice was hoarse. "Commander, it's done." Dane didn't answer. The other officers stayed back. Even now, especially now, none of them dared interrupt the man who had led Earth's fury across the stars. But Varric pressed. "The fleet's dead. Eris has gone dark. The vanguard's regrouping. Some are splitting off. Some are—" "Tell them to go home," Dane said, cutting him off, voice like sandpaper. Varric blinked. "Commander?" Dane turned to face him. His eyes were bloodshot, sunken, ringed with months of sleeplessness and war. "I didn't build this thing to run an empire," he said. "I built it so Earth could die standing up. But we're done now. We don't need to keep bleeding." He stepped past him. "Tell them all, stand down, disengage, no more fire." It was the one order they hadn't expected. No one celebrated, no one cheered. They just obeyed. Because when a war ends in ash and bone, there's nothing left to clap for. In the medical wing, the girl, the clone of Terra, sat silently. She'd barely spoken since she'd been rescued. The doctors called her Echo, a nickname born out of the fact she reacted more to memory recordings than people. She watched old Earth videos with strange focus, birthday parties, school lessons, stories from before the war. But when Rylan Dane entered the room, she looked up. He didn't smile, didn't force affection. He just sat beside her. "Do you know who you are?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "No," he said. "Me neither." The truth was, he didn't know what came next. He hadn't planned past vengeance, didn't have blueprints for peace. Earth had no real government anymore, just scattered bunkers, broken colonies, a few war-scarred survivors in orbiting shells. But they were alive. For the first time in nearly 4 decades, Earth was alive and feared. That had to mean something, didn't it? He returned to the neurofusion core one last time. The chamber buzzed like a sleeping storm. The AI had been quiet since the battle. Too quiet. "Status?" Dane asked. "Operational. Awaiting directive." "Primary objective complete. Retribution executed." He hesitated. "Can you be shut down?" The pause was longer than it should have been. "Unclear. Core is self-sustaining. Neural imprint is permanent. Fusion of memory and system integrity cannot be reversed." Dane nodded slowly. "Then what happens to you?" The AI responded with something unexpected. "Unknown." He unplugged. Slowly. The sensation of disconnecting felt deeper this time, like leaving a part of his body behind. He turned to leave the chamber, then stopped. He looked back at the core, that pulsating brain of alloy and sorrow, and said quietly, "Don't let anyone use you again." The lights dimmed in reply. The council fractured. In the weeks that followed the battle, former council worlds began splitting off, some into isolation, some into desperate new alliances. Valkyris was burning from the inside, Overthrown by rebels, their old leaders hanged publicly for crimes against Earth. Tarsik vanished into the outer belt. Word was they'd started purging their own bloodlines, terrified of what Earth's retaliation would be if another child disappeared. And Eris Prime? They sent one final message. No apology, no request for negotiation, just records, data logs, hidden archives, names, every Earth child taken, cloned, sold, dissected. It was their way of saying, we were wrong, and we're terrified. The Vanguard disbanded. Some ships returned to Earth's orbit. Others scattered into the black, worn down by years of war, no longer sure what to believe in without something to kill. Ryland Dane didn't try to hold them together. He didn't try to take power. He just let them go. Because he was tired of fire. Earth began to rebuild, not quickly, not neatly, but quietly. Crops returned in the deep southern valleys. Underground cities reopened. Children, real ones, born after the worst of the war, began to smile again. And in one quiet station above the Pacific Rim, the little girl named Echo was enrolled in school. Her teachers didn't know what she was. She didn't either. But when someone asked her what she wanted to be, she answered with one word. Free. Dane stepped off Xerxes for the final time 6 weeks after the war ended. No fanfare, no ceremony. He walked down the cold ramp, alone, and left the ship in orbit, silent, locked, drifting. He knew it would never be dismantled. Earth needed it to stay there, as a warning. But no one would fly it again. No one would dare. Elric met him on the southern continent. He'd come down from his surviving bastion with a group of engineers, helping rebuild the old spaceports. The two brothers didn't hug. They didn't cry. They just sat on a rock and passed a flask between them. You think they'll ever come back? Elric asked. Maybe, Dane said. And if they do? He looked up at the sky. They'll remember what we did the last time. A pause. Then Elric smiled, the first real smile in years. Maybe that's enough. And for Ryland Dane, it was. He'd carried Earth's grief across the stars, turned sorrow into steel, turned memory into missiles. Bled for names buried in foreign soil. He hadn't saved everyone, but he'd made the galaxy remember them, and no one would forget Earth again. Not after Xerxes. Not after the day they raised the Warship and made civilizations beg for mercy. Epilogue. 6 years later, the Xerxes still floats in low orbit, inactive, power down to 3%, solar panels torn, hull cracked from micrometeorites, but it never fell. And in a hidden relay station beneath the moon's crust, a quiet signal continues to pulse every 24 hours. 4 words. Same message. Never replied to. Never changed. We remember their names.